MoritzKarl.com, continuing my video lesson series on the correspondence team match played between my video lessons group and the team CARPE DIEM. This is played on board 164. Our man is MoritzKarl playing ehud, and rating advantage high 1800s versus high 17, low 1800s. And let's have a look at the game. And I'm happy to report both sides apparently did their research on the opening. They played some book moves, and it followed theory for a number of moves. I'm not exactly sure where it fell out, but eventually all games need to leave book, or you just duplicate somebody else's win or loss, and it's only fun on the former, right? Okay. So here what's happened is, instead of taking an isolated queen pawn, White's invited black to have these two hanging pawns. Now these are a plus and a minus for black. If the pawn gets to e5, black staked out some territory, got a pawn center, free development for his bishops. Interesting position, controlling a lot of the center squares, right? And but black needs to get that in, and if white mobilizes, he should be able to create threats on them, and as we will see, he could have. Both sides continue development, and White's willing to give up the bishop pair here, but maybe Black's next move was premature. I think White had a good reply against it. What White played is knight b5, but I think what he should play is knight e4 or f3 instead. This threatens to win a pawn. It also threatens to take this knight and undermine this pawn. And if black does nothing, that's going to happen. Okay, so we're ready to take this pawn. We're threatening to take on f6 and take this pawn. The best I can find for black, and I'm not even sure it's all that great, is to go ahead with e4, and then on bishop takes, you take the queen, and black has the two bishops, and he can hold on to his pawn on d3 for a while, but I think eventually it's going to be lost. He can get a bishop to defend it. And this is the kind of position that these knights, they just have this wonderful outpost. I think it's just a matter of time before black wins that pawn on d3. And white will still have some nuisance value because of his bishops, but I like white's chances. And I think that's the best black can get out of it. But instead he plays knight b5, but this is working out. White's getting all his pieces in the game. He kicks it out of play. Kicks that knight out of play, but that's okay. Black's working on his development. And I guess white didn't want to grab this pawn. The queen would come out to b6, and that knight might be a little embarrassed, right? Okay, so, but I think maybe this could have worked out. It just seemed like white's going to be advancing his queenside pawns, and it seems to make them weak, and black was able to exploit that. But white did have a resource, so even though it looks a little shaky, it probably could have worked out, and we'll see what I mean in just a moment. Now white parts with the bishop pair. Now he has two knights versus two bishops. A lot of times that's good for the two bishops, but with the center closed, the bishops aren't very maneuverable. You have to advance these pawns before these bishops will really come into the game. And if you can advance them, you're staking out more territory. And here's another advance that it exposes the white pawns to danger, but white missed a good move here. And the move he plays attacks a pawn, but he attacked the right pawn, but from the wrong square. Queen h4 is what he plays, and it does attack f6. But a better way to attack f6 is to play queen f3, because this not only attacks f6, it attacks b7. And I think white comes out of this okay. It'll survive. What is black going to do? Okay, let's consider his options. If queen c6 stops the the queen threat on the pawn, threatens to trade queens, defends the f6 pawn. Well, white can liquidate the queens and then play knight here. The rook needs to move. Where do you want to put it? D8. That way it won't be attacked next move. And suddenly black's got he's won a pawn. Yeah, it's not he got his pawn back. He's just won a pawn. And that knight's going to go to e4, which is a decent blockader. And white's got a slight advantage, I think, ever so slight. I think the two bishops give black some compensation, but white shouldn't lose from that position. Now, black doesn't have to play queen c6, but what else is there? You want to guard f6. Okay, how do you do that? Well, move the bishop. Let's try putting the bishop on g6 because that gives it a long diagonal. Well, white can probably just grab this pawn now, and once again, black is a pawn ahead, and white's a pawn ahead, and black has to work here. So queen h4 just didn't quite work, as we will see, because black plays queen c6 anyway. But the difference here is white can't take on c6 and play his knight to d7. And now when he tries to redeploy to put pressure on f6, black has resources. And now suddenly the weak queen side of white's comes into play, and those advanced pawns are going to fall. And here they go. There goes one. And now c4 is weak. So black puts the pressure up on c4. And there's a pin. And the pin isn't broken. And suddenly black is winning another pawn. So white could have been a pawn up, and instead white's 2 pawns down. And his game is rapidly falling apart. Occupies the 7th rank. Gets the rooks doubled. And here white wins a pawn back, but it's not enough, simply because black has too many resources here. Queen c5 attacks the rook, breaks the pin, attacks the rook, and the rook doesn't have a good square to go to because black is threatening a queen takes f2 check and probably a quick mate to follow. So white gave up here. Let's flip the board, reset, load the other game. What move will it start it out at? That started out on move, whatever it was, I don't know. Didn't start out where it's supposed to. Now, here's a case where they didn't follow book, which makes me wonder. Now, white has a perfectly good move here, as black is playing a slow line against the Italian or Gioco piano. Just d4 right now. Perfectly good. Give white a nice game. What does white play? Well, you watch this series. Guess what he plays? h3. Why? Okay. The only time you want to stop this pin is when there's pressure on d4. And there is no pressure on d4 because that's a square white owns. Okay? You don't have time for bishop g4 now. There's a piece hanging that you have to deal with. I'm not going to go over a book, but too much. But pawn takes. This is similar to the Molar attack, but the difference is this: in the Molar attack, this pawn is back there and this knight's here, and black has resources. Black doesn't have as many. White gets a nice game out of this. If you retreat the bishop, white gets a nice game out of this too. I think black might be in trouble here. Okay, if pawn takes, queen takes, and black is going to lose a pawn. His knight on c6 is overworked. If you take, and the king is kind of overworked too. King needs to take and is guarding on f7. But king takes drops a pawn on f7 and you can't castle. Knight takes drops the pawn on e5. Taking with the knight is even worse for black. I'll show you why. because white has this little trick. Bishop check first, winning the pawn first, then trade queens, and black's drawn a pawn and can't castle. So black doesn't have time to play bishop b6. So black is virtually forced to play pawn takes, and then after pawn takes here, the bishop needs to move. The best move is probably to put the bishop on b4 with check. Bishop b6 is played. Like I said, I don't know all the theory, but white's getting pieces developed. Bingo, knight c3. Now this bishop g4, white was trying to prevent. I don't think it's any good. Just castle. Okay, look at that. 3 minor pieces developed and castled. Can't take on d4, and you certainly don't want to play bishop takes, queen takes, and then knight takes, because you get checkmated down on f7. So just a demonstration, another demonstration of why these rook pawn moves are not good. But black's going to misplay this here shortly. Now, white doesn't play d4. He kind of missed his chance. But he's going to play it soon enough. Now, usually the best move is to bring the bishop back here. And now here's the point where black starts to go wrong and messes game up. The correct move is to castle. If you castle, you've broken the pin, and black has full equality because white stopped to play this h3 move. Okay, black may even be slightly better because he's actually ahead in development. Black has, at this position, has 4 minor pieces developed and has castled. Okay, black's better here, just based on that. If white wants to double black's pawns, let him do it on his own. So black plays a6. Well, he doesn't do that. He plays a6, and he starts to get himself in trouble because he hasn't castled. Now here he should still castle, but he doesn't. He steps into a pin. Now suddenly d4 is potent. And, the idea is to follow up with a pawn to d5. And you can see black is running into trouble here. So he takes, and he just doesn't want to see that pawn coming into d5. So he stops and gives a check. But suddenly white's doing great here. Takes, develops the white knight. And the threat is d5. And black doesn't really have a good move. He just doesn't. I mean, maybe he could try b5. But, I think white can happily go this route, give black some crummy pawns. Probably better in there, too, if you look long enough. I mean, just a preliminary idea. But anyway, black plays d5, and that just invites disaster. Now knight e5 misses, because, you advance a pawn, you weaken a square. In this case, you gave up e5. Now there's a pin. And suddenly, black's in all kinds of trouble. Queen d6, you take the knight, and there's a new fork coming. It's almost unfair that the white can get so many forks out of this position. But, he does, this might work, but then you have, problems with knight takes here. I mean, it's just a shame, that your game can fall apart so quickly after getting full equality. It's one of the reasons you want to castle early. And let's just go and look at that for a second. Let's bring this position back up. Okay. This is after white's 7th move. When white played knight e5, it was only on move 13. Now let's look at how much the position has changed. Here it's black to play. He's got 4 minor pieces out, and he can castle, as I explained. Now, just 6 moves later, what's changed in black's game? He's traded off 1 piece and developed his queen, and now his queen is under fire. What's changed in white's game? Well, let's go back and look. Okay, white's traded off a bishop. He's got his knights on better squares. The knights have been developed, and he's attacking the black queen. That's the difference. White hasn't gained that much either, but he gained enough. All black did was develop his queen over the next 6 moves. That's all he did. And white traded off a bishop and got 2 knights developed. So white gained in the next 6 moves. Okay, so a6. Let's just review it. Bishop a4. Well, black should still castle. He doesn't. He develops the queen. Now he's not going to be developing anything else. Bishop attacked. Stops that. Bishop attacked. Gives a check. Bishop attacked. Makes a trade. Okay, now threat of a fork. And just like that, we're at move 13. Bingo. Black's whole game changed. And now let's do one final comparison over what black could have done. Look at this position here for black. Look at what black could have had. Now let's look at it for white. After knight e5. Let me find it here in the PGN. Where is it? Glad I didn't analyze that. Here it is. Okay. Now look at what's changed for white. This is what I've already said. The 2 knights got developed. And, white suddenly got a winning game. So black elects to give up, black elects to give up the queen for 2 minor pieces, and now the game is just over. So there's really not much commenting to go from here on in. A queen for 2 minor pieces is a decisive advantage. And doesn't matter what black does, unless white blunders, this game is over. And it gets his pawn back. But no worry. A queen for a bishop, a knight, and a pawn is not enough. Black does not have enough here. And suddenly g6 is in trouble. Or g7 rather. There goes that pawn, and there goes another one. And at this point, black decided to resign. So, it's why did they make the castling rule? Well, I'll tell you. Let's give you a quick history to close out this video. In the old days, they didn't have castling possible, but they discovered that it was be a good idea to get the king off to the corner and have him safe. So let's reset the board. I'm not saying this is how the players would play, but I'm just making up some, well, I don't want to allow a check. I'm going to do it this way. Okay. Well, I'm not getting this done like I want because I'm trying to illustrate a different point. Let me back this up. Sorry about this. Okay. I'm just going to move the pawn 1 square. That'll avoid some of the complications. Like I said, I'm just trying to make a point. At some point, what the players would do is they would mutually agree to do this simultaneously. At least that's the legend. A lot of chess legends are later disproven. But they would play along this line, and then they would resume the game, okay? Now, something along this line. And they thought, well, why waste all that time doing that when we can just make a rule out of it and save the trouble? Besides, what if one side decides, I don't want to cooperate, I don't want to castle my king? It was something they were agreeing to do together. But then I guess when they were playing other players, maybe they would be busy castling by hand and their opponent wouldn't. Whether that worked out or not, who knows? But eventually it became a rule, and it's certainly a good rule. And you can castle as early as move 4. Sometimes if you play Fischer random chess or chess 960, you can castle on move 1. It's kind of interesting when you can do that. I've done it before. But you do want to castle, and had black castled his king, he would have been fine. Let's, just for the fun of it, bring it back. I think I still have it in the memory. Let's see. Okay. So instead of breaking a pin, he stepped into a pin. But let's hold a6. Let's just castle. Well, what's white need to do? Well, white needs to castle too, right? Is he going to try to castle queenside and start a pawn assault? Well, we can look at both. Castle. Now, let's put the queen here. Okay. Now let's put the bishop here. This goes here. Here. Black's still ahead in development. You know, completely level game. Suppose White wants to castle queenside instead because he's played h3. Well, we can look at that. Okay, castle. Okay, first step, bishop here. Bishop comes back. Now let's put the queen here. Let's bring the queen here. And since we know White's going to castle queenside, I'm going to put this rook here. That way, we've got a possibility to have this rook on the a file where we want it. And now go ahead and play a6. And if this retreats, take this, give him the open file. Let's get our attack going. And you have opposite side of castling with who knows what will happen. Both sides have winning chances. But it's certainly better for Black than what happened, okay? We don't know how White would play it, but this is certainly better for Black than the game he got. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'm officially caught up with 119 videos. Currently there are 72 games remaining to be completed, and a number of our players have a number of those games. Neither game is finished, or there's been a draw, or one side or the other has lost. So for those that still wanting a video, if you've won a game, you've guaranteed a video, but not until you complete your game will I make the video, your remaining game, okay? Because just be next to impossible to keep track if I went one by one. So you get two games on one video if you can win and draw one, or win them both. If you win one, I'll do the video on your win. If you lose them both, sorry, no video. And if you get a draw and a loss, same thing. And there may be up to a dozen videos that we scored two of that won't, or a dozen games or boards I won't make a video for. These were the early timeouts. There are a handful of cheaters banned on both sides early in the match, and all those games ended 1 to 5 moves or something. And then there were a number of timeouts around move 10, and there just wasn't enough to make a commentary video out of it. But there's a potential 48 more videos, so we can get up to 167. I don't think we'll make it that many, but I'll be happy to make that many. That means we win every game, just about, including the ones where we're down 0-1. Anyway, thanks so much for your time.